the moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI. Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Hey, look at this. It's the first appearance of Black Panther. Hey, look at this. So I have him on the lookout for that 35 set of Star Wars. And I send him a picture. And he's like, my dad's pretty sure he has this. And I'm like, if he has that, dude, I got cash in my head right now.
Yeah.
And he goes, you know, that's like, in mid-condition, that's like a $6,000 book. And I'm like, oh, so like,
All right, so we ready to go?
hey, welcome back.
Hello.
Welcome back. I think I do that every episode. I got to stop that.
Welcome back. Once or twice you've done it. I don't think it's overkill, but I'll cut it out anyway.
Yeah, but can you cut out every time you say foppish? Because I think you dropped the F-bomb 5 times last episode.
Did I? Well, I think
Foppish a lot for the British. Jim, do you have some...
I think it was warranted. I think that word was warranted. I can't really, there's not a word I could better use to describe.
I don't think you use it in your everyday
I
vernacular.
don't want to be offensive to anybody, and I think that's the least offensive word I could come up with.
That was your happy middle of the road.
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah,
All
we're
right.
back.
We're back after our Christmas extravaganza.
Yes, I'm full of candy canes right now.
So, gentlemen, this week it's going to be a spider-centric episode.
Spider-centric from Spidey Central. It's the all Spidey episode.
And I was envisioning this really as a tribute to Spider-Man himself, not just a review of 2 different movies, but hopefully we can go down some paths.
Well, I think we're looking at both ends of the spectrum. We're looking at the beginning and the latest. We're going into a time machine, a Spidey time machine.
Yes, we
I
are.
like it.
We're going to revisit some book and records, some toys. I'm hoping that I might jog some of your memories with some of my stories. So I'm looking forward to this episode. So we don't really have any news, as we were discussing before we started today.
It's a slow news week.
Yeah, the trailers weren't really that inspiring either before Spider-Man. I was hoping to get an in-theater Infinity War.
I was saying the
Trailer.
same thing, and I was very surprised.
Yeah.
Nope.
I got like all religious films.
Yes, right? It was like those feel-good Hallmark Channel. Yeah, it is a slow news week. All right, let's put this out there.
But there was one called The Kid Who Could Be King. The Kid Who
I've
Would
seen
Be
that
King.
twice now, yeah.
Doesn't look bad.
It looked cute.
Kind of Harry Potter-ish, knockoff-ish kind of a movie, but still, I think if on a slow movie week, it might be worthy.
It looks, yes, it was very kid. That's the one thing the trailers were very kid. Even so, did you get the Shazam trailer before this Into the Spiderverse?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Now, we've all seen that trailer a few times now. And what I found interesting, which is in this version, they cut out the scene where he gets shot, where the bad guys pull the gun and he finds out that he's bulletproof.
I didn't notice that it wasn't there, but now that you say that.
Because I saw Into the Spider-Verse on Friday, and then last night I saw an advanced screening of Aquaman. And same trailer, Aquaman trailer had that scene. Into the Spider-Verse did not. So I thought that was very interesting. And there was a very family-driven audience in the Spider-Man screening. I don't know how your audience experience was, but I had a lot of kids. I had a lot of families.
Same.
Yeah,
but I think it's the difference in the rating because Spider-Verse is PG and Aquaman is PG-13.
There you go. It doesn't change. It's not like they pulled it from the movie, but they pulled it from the trailer, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, who knew that Shazam would get a red band trailer?
Right? What else does he do with those superpowers?
I know. So, yeah, that's our pathetic news.
Pathetic at best.
That's the end of the news.
Yes. So, Spider-Verse.
Let's get into this.
What was the anticipation level going into this movie for you?
I had none. I had seen the trailer once, and I was like, okay, an animated Spider-Man. Okay, I'll give it a shot. That was my anticipation.
I don't know if I had anticipation, but as I mentioned last week, I was a little off-putting by the animation, what I was seeing in the commercials. Because some of it looked pretty spectacular, no pun intended. And then others just looked a little like off. So I didn't really know what to expect. And this whole bringing in different Spider-Mans from different universes was a weird concept. So I don't know if I had high expectations or low expectations, but I was excited to see it.
Now, Jeff, let's bring up the R word, rotoscoping. Did you look into this at all after you saw it, as how they did the animation? Can you?
No, I haven't really. No, I haven't even had time to really digest this, unfortunately. So I didn't do as much homework on the back end of this as I normally do for a movie. I came out of the theater with my initial thoughts and I put them on paper, and that's about as far as I went. So you're going to get raw emotion from me on this. You're not going to get a lot of behind the scenes. I'm assuming that you probably did a little more than I did.
Just a little. Not that much.
So are you going to tell me that they did do rotoscoping? Or
Well, no, I couldn't confirm that because it just said that it was CGI rendered.
Yeah.
And then they retrofitted that with 2D animation. I couldn't tell if they used live actors. It seemed the animation was very fluid and it seemed very photorealistic. So I assumed that they did in certain scenes, but I couldn't confirm nor deny that.
Well, we'll have to look into that further because it's definitely warranted.
So it's getting rave reviews. It's doing well at the box office. It was a crowded theater when I saw it, and I have to say I enjoyed it. I would have liked to have seen more of an ensemble movie with all the various spider folk that are in this. It's much more of a Miles Morales origin story. So it's really
which surprised me.
Yeah, it's his movie, and the others are there just really to support the Miles Morales character. And it's fine. You know, I enjoyed him, but I would have, especially Spider Noir, played by Nicolas Cage. I loved him in this, and I was really disappointed that you didn't get to see more of him.
He was an interesting character.
Yes. And Spiderham as well. Really, the only thing you get to see of that character in the movie is what you see in the trailer, and that's pretty much it.
Mike, your thoughts?
I loved it. I thought that the mix of like animation and the hand drawn, it was like a live comic book. So I was like just blown away with it. And I was like, at one point I was sitting there, I'm like, I wonder what Jeff thinks about this. Because they really made a contemporary movie with, music and, bringing in like more contemporary versions of Spider-Man, Spider-Gwen, that I was just like, wow, this is just awesome.
I'm going to back you on that. I'm going to say this is the best movie I've seen all year. I absolutely love this movie. I cannot talk to anybody without immediately going into my high-pitched voice and being like, dude, you need to see this movie. It is unbelievable. I was blown away by this. I think that the animation style, like I said, it's jarring at first because when there's a point where Ben and I turn to each other and it's almost like, did we accidentally walk into a 3D version and not have the glasses? Because there's a lot of
that as well. There's a lot of weird blurring going on.
There's a lot of weird blurring going on. But as Mike said, it is straight up an adaptation. It's a live comic book. I mean, you got word bubbles, you got sound effects, you got the thought patterns going on, with the panel to panel, which go back to Ang Lee's first Hulk. And he kind of played with that a little bit where you get the comic book panels and, the Hulk jumps from one to the other, different angles of the same shot and they really just took this to the next level, and it is mind-blowing. It is, if you are prone to epileptic seizures, I recommend not seeing this because it is visceral overload. I want to see every Marvel movie done in this style. Imagine an X-Men movie like this. It's crazy. It blew me away. Yeah. Absolutely blew me away.
So none of you saw this in 3D?
No, I can't imagine what this looks like in 3D.
I saw an IMAX, and when I came out, I'm like, I want to see the movie again.
Yeah, I know people who've already seen it 3 times.
Yeah, I'm like walking down the hallway, and I'm like, is there anything starting right now that I can just jump into?
It is just look. So for probably the first time, we're like so on board with this, except for Jim. So you didn't like it as much as we did, obviously.
Well, no, I thought it was very eye-popping, and I loved looking at it. But story-wise, I thought it dragged a little bit. And they didn't have enough of the other characters.
I mean, that's a valid point because that's the way they sell it in the trailer. But you're right. I was surprised. It is very much a Miles Morales origin story, which you got the impression that he was already established, and that's not the case whatsoever. And I went back and did a little bit of homework, and a lot of this is pulled directly from the comic books, from when they launched him in the Ultimate Spider-Man. Because I guess he does encounter Peter Parker from our universe. And a lot of that story carries through. So it's not like they created this from scratch just for the movie. There is some basis that's pulled from the comics.
Right. Now let's talk about that, the Spiderverse aspect of this, of getting into the story, which was my favorite part of it, bringing in those other characters in that one event where Miles and his version of Peter Parker in his reality, and this kind of you could lose track of what we're saying here. So hopefully you've seen the movie. So you can
we're gonna spoil the hell out of this. So again, if you have not seen this and you have any thought in going, you should go.
Go right now.
Go right now. Yeah,
right now. Stop listening and go.
It is worth seeing, even for somebody like me who was a little disappointed with the story. The look of this thing is just 1 in a million. It's unlike any other animated movie.
It is. And I've already read that they're talking sequel and that there will be other movies. Sony will be doing other movies, Marvel movies in this style.
It's already greenlit, the sequel.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I will say that I hope that they don't just take this formula and rehash, because the style that they establish is so tied into who and what Miles is, as far as like the streetwise kid who does a lot of tag graffiti. That's like a running theme through this. So you get the spray paint, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of that carry through that I think is personifies him as a character. So if you turned around and did like an X-Men movie, I would think they would have a slightly different aesthetic.
Even when the Kingpin's machine or whatever it is, or
the Super Collider or whatever.
Yeah, when it opens the other dimensions, that looks like a blast of graffiti paint.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
And let's talk about the opening, the Marvel logo.
That's
opening.
genius. I mean, right from the beginning, you were transported, because you're immediately giving all these alternative dimension, alternate timeline versions of the Marvel, Sony, Columbia Pictures logos. And at first you're kind of like, what the hell's going on here? But it all ties in. It's brilliant. It is absolutely
of course,
brilliant.
You get the comics code at the very end of it.
Yeah, which you've never seen in any of these movies. Obviously, we had our next to last Stan Lee cameo, and that elicited such an awe in my audience. I was like, oh.
And at least he was in there more than once. If you caught his little second cameo in the post-credits sequence, the voice of James.
Yeah, you're right. Even the music. The music is so spot on to the character, to who and what he is, you know, when he's listening to the music. That's funny, because I was Googling, I had a question about his dad, and as soon as I Google Miles Morales, it comes up in Google, what song was he singing? Because there's a scene where he's doing his homework or whatever, and he's got his head. It's called Sunflower. I don't know. It's there's Ben knew who that was. It's a famous rapper. And
Chance the rapper? I think it's Chance.
No, it's not Chance. It was I couldn't even tell you. I'm not even gonna fathom a guess, because I will be so off. It's wrong. But they wrote it specifically for this movie. But I cannot say enough good things about this movie. I am in love with this. It was over the top for me. As a matter of fact, I felt really bad, because I did have a family in front of me with a little girl who probably was no more than 7. And I dropped the F-bomb a number of times, because I just kept saying, this is fucking unbelievable. This is like, I really was caught up.
Did you get the stink eye from them at any point?
No, not at all. And she turns around, she goes, you're freaking right. No, she didn't say that.
Yeah.
She high-fived me. I will tell you this, which is last night we were waiting in line for Aquaman, and the lady in front of me was buying a ticket for her son, and they were going to see Spider-Man. And he's probably maybe 12. And I'm like, dude, I said, you were going to love this movie. I saw it last night. And he turned around and gave me the stink eye, like, oh man, why are you talking to me? and I just felt like an idiot. I was like, I'm trying to give you props that you're going to go see this movie. And he's just like, no.
So let's go back to the Spider-Verse aspect of this. Right. I really want to talk about, first of all, that Miles Morales' reality does contain his own Peter Parker.
Is Peter Parker. I'm pretty sure you know the rest. I saved the city, fell in love, then I saved the city again and again and again. Look, I'm a comic book, a cereal, I did a Christmas album, and a so-so popsicle.
Yes.
But it's not the Peter Parker that we know in our, and I say our, in our universe.
But that's what
The
you
one
have
that
to,
we-
exactly. That's what
Right.
you have to establish, though, which is the Peter Parker that he does encounter, the slightly older Peter Parker, is our Peter
That's
Parker.
that's the one that we know and love from
Correct.
all the canon
Right.
that we've grown up with.
That's a harsh kick in the face when
Yeah.
you're introduced to him too. Well, it's rough, first of all, because Miles's Peter Parker is killed.
Very early on, and he is played by Chris
Chris
Pine.
Pine. There you
Yeah.
go. For all of like 2 lines on his deathbed, basically.
So he is Spider-Man like at his physical peak. So he's 25, 26 years old. I think that they established
Yeah.
when they were
Yeah, because
Yeah.
so that's the one neat narrative that they do, which is they start with, all right, let me start at the beginning. I got bit by a radioactive spider. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've saved it. And they go back into the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, with the weird posing and the dancing.
Right, because they go, and I did this, and they show that stupid dance that he does from the 3rd movie, and
Yes.
he's like, yeah, we'll not talk about that.
And then they did the saving the subway train from
The subway,
from
yeah.
Spider-Man 2.
The dinner scene where he's in the where he's
in the
having
diner, in the coffee
in the
shop,
diner,
whatever.
Yep, and the car comes through they really picked up on that stuff, which I thought was great. So it's like you're establishing the canon. Those movies took place, but it's kind of rough because he gets killed.
But then again, it's a little bit twisted because it's not exactly canon with the Tobey Maguire stuff because this Spider-Man is blonde. There's
slight variations,
there's
right?
slight variations on all of these timelines.
Yeah, I mean, you realize early on when they're in Times Square, like, the Coca-Cola, it's Loco-Cola.
Right.
So it's like our timeline just slightly askewed.
So Spider-Man dies early on, the Peter Parker Spider-Man, but Miles's Peter Parker dies.
At the hands of the Kingpin.
At the hands of the Kingpin, brutally at the hands of the Kingpin.
And that Kingpin, now, Mike, back me up on this. I mean, that Kingpin is pulled straight from Bill Sienkiewicz. I mean, Bill Sienkiewicz, who still is a very famous comic book artist. And he's got a very, very unique style. And he tends to draw these characters just very over the top. And the Kingpin is just a mountain of a man with just this big fat head in the center of his chest, for lack of a better term. He's just a hulking blob. There's a scene where they show, it's like a flashback where you realize that the Kingpin lost his wife and son. And that's a whole plot device to this collider, as he's trying to bring them back.
Which is a nice carry through with the Daredevil show because the character of the wife is in the Daredevil show as well. So
Right.
Yeah, Vanessa.
Yeah, Vanessa. Yeah. And that style, that flashback is also very Bill Sienkiewicz-esque in its art style and its animation.
Yeah, and it's funny, talk about how when you see a name in print and you don't really know how to pronounce it. I
Right.
used to pronounce that Sankovic. Well, in my head, Stankovic. That's how I pronounced it.
Yeah. I'm sure people still call him that. Yes.
So we see it.
Peter
So Miles witnesses the death of Peter Parker, and this takes place right after a battle with the Green Goblin. And you never see the Goblin again in the movie. Does the Goblin die in the opening scene as well?
That's a good question.
I don't think so.
Yeah, they never really bring him up again. And again, that's the Ultimate Universe Green Goblin. But this all takes place after he gets bit by the spider. His uncle, he goes to his uncle.
Yeah.
His uncle takes him to, because he's getting in trouble. His dad is a cop, and he's getting called out for tagging these little sticker things that he graffitis up and then sticks around the city.
It's like his version of us leaving TMI postcards.
There you go. Has anybody found any yet? So his uncle, who he has a really close relationship with, and in a little strained relationship with his father, his brother, but he turns to his uncle, and his uncle, being the cool uncle, takes him to like this secret underground abandoned train station where he's allowed to just go nuts and tag, and he creates this beautiful expectations mural. But yeah, he gets bit by the spider, and so that leads into him encountering.
Because then I was thinking to myself during these early scenes, how coincidental that there's a radioactive spider here.
Yeah,
and
they
how
all
coincidental that it's so close to the Kingpin's hideout. But then as you learn a little bit later on that his uncle is actually the Prowler, maybe it is not so coincidental.
Yeah,
that
and
little secret
that is
spot
all
was where it was.
Yep, that's all comic book canon too. Yeah, it's so obviously he's witness to Peter's death. He escapes. The Kingpin is like, capture this kid. And then there's this, he's on the run, and the Prowler's after him, not realizing that it's uncle and nephew.
And nephew, yeah. So the Collider works a little bit, at least, just enough to open some portals and to bring in these other spider people.
Well, do you think that's because Peter had his head shoved into it, so they were all kind of drawn to him?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
because because nobody else that we know of came through these portals except the spider people.
Yeah, there's not like alternate versions of you suddenly running around. Just important superhero versions. Now that Spider-Man is dead, it's revealed to the world who he was, and there's this huge outpouring of people, leaving stuff at his graves, leaving stuff at his aunt's home, who was Lily Tomlin, by the way. I didn't realize that was her until the end credits. She's a little feisty.
Right, and totally invested in Peter's secret, apparently.
Yeah, yeah. That's
now is he being bankrolled by Tony Stark in this reality? How does he get all
that does seem to be a good question, because I'm sure he's not still making money selling pictures to JJ.
Yeah. Aunt May has what appears to be like a bat cave under her house with all these
That I don't know if that's comic book canon.
The Dune buggy was down there.
The Dune buggy, right? That was such a throwback to the old cartoon.
Yeah.
And then the whole bank of Spidey suits, you're going right down Tony Stark Batman territory.
And I did look up that Spidey suit with the cape. I believe from just I was reading some stuff, and I think that was on the cover of a What If in the late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, wow. So they dug deep.
Yeah.
They did do their homework. This is such a love letter to Spider-Man as a character and comic books as a whole. So he ends up at the graveside of Peter Parker because Peter basically gives Miles this little, what they call a goober, but it was a little chip that was going to somehow stop the Collider. Peter Parker realizes before he's killed that Miles has abilities, that he's like him, that he has Spidey sense, that he has he had some kind of electric zap power, and he can actually turn invisible. And he gives him this thing, and he says, you need to plug this into the Collider, and you need to turn it off. And so now Miles is on the mission.
And he breaks it.
As we all would. I'm sorry to say, but don't entrust me with saving the world there, Peter, because I ain't gonna do it.
And let's talk about the sobering reality of our Peter Parker, what he turns into. We find out a divorcee who's let himself go, who can't quite fit into the old Spider-Man costume.
Are those sweatpants?
But really, it kind of speaks to the fact that Peter, in the books and growing up, he never grew up. He always stayed, he started high school, but then he was always in that college, just out of college age.
Yeah.
And this is kind of really brings him into a reality. Well, what would happen if Peter Parker grew up?
And I think that's the problem. That's why they created the Ultimate Universe to begin with, which is you can't have 40 plus years of stories with this character and not have him grow up. You can't keep him a 16-year-old kid forever. And unfortunately, that was the allure when Spider-Man was created, was that he was this everyday kid who was thrust into this situation of dealing with these powers. And then the catalyst of having his uncle be killed forced him to step up and take the mantle, so to speak. Over the years, I think he got married. He became a college professor. Newer generations of readers just couldn't connect with him. You and I, who grew up not really the same age, but I guess around the same age, where they started to actually age him. So you kind of grew up with him, and you could relate to his situations of not being able to pay the mortgage, as opposed to not being able to pay bus money to get to school, kind of a thing. And so they went out of their way, and they rebooted the entire universe with this ultimate version, which was go back to the basics, go back to the very beginning. He's now a 12-year-old kid, a 13-year-old kid.
Because that's what really based Spider-Man into the kid-friendly realm of the 70s. In the 70s, between the ages of 5 and 10 years old, when I was first starting to get into comics, it was Spider-Man that I gravitated to because, like you said, Jeff, it spoke to me, those stories, even though he was college age by that time.
Right.
The Avengers stuff, anything else around that time that was too heady for me, I just avoided.
Right.
The space operas of even the Fantastic Four, I think, were a bit too much, but Spider-Man was just always right up my alley.
Like right in your sweet spot, because you could relate to them. Good old Spider-Man. So yeah, it's kind of a sobering reality so our Peter Parker was 10 years older, so he'd been doing it for like 20 years or whatever. So he was older, like you said, paunchier, sadder, just kind of like gave up on everything. Yeah, it was a rough revelation, I guess. So now Miles wants to be trained, and Peter Parker won't do it. Our Peter Parker won't do it. He just won't do it. But they end up back at the lab somewhere up in Hudson Valley.
In Hudson Valley, yeah, as if it was a city in itself.
Right,
Hudson
correct.
Valley, New York.
Yeah, Hudson Valley. They take the bus up there. They infiltrate.
And this is where we get...
Teach me? Yes, I can. Time to swing. Good, you're doing it. Double tap to release and thwip it out again. Okay. Thwip and release. You're a natural. Thwip.
Thwip and release.
Yeah, it's a nice evolution of him coming to grips with, all right, this kid's going to get himself killed, so I have to at least instill in him something. And it's Miles coming to the realization that it doesn't matter where he came from or who he is, he can make a difference. So I can't say enough about this movie. It really is.
You know what? One of my did you guys have any favorite scenes? Because I was thinking there's this one where he runs up to the roof and he's trying to build his confidence or whatever. And
I know where you're going.
And you're like, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? And then the next scene is he's running back down the stairs.
Yeah.
Man, this was just so well done.
Yeah, because he doesn't just commit to it. He goes up to the tallest building. He's like, all right, I'm going to do this. And he stands there. And then also, and that's where the music plays in great on this.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it cuts back and he's running down the stairs and the audience lost it. Yeah, it's all about a leap of faith. I mean, that was the overriding theme, which was you never know when you're ready. And that's the fight. When all the other Spider-Men start showing up, Spider-Gwen. And that's a cute scene we didn't talk about, which is, you know, at the beginning of the movie, Miles has been bumped up into this elite boarding school.
Yes,
he got picked for a lottery. He doesn't want to go. He doesn't fit in. His dad's a cop. His dad's like, dude, you got to take this opportunity. You got to run with it. And all he wants to do is go back to his street friends. He wants to go back and not be a part of this world. And he encounters Gwen.
Wait, why is the voice in my head so loud?
Oh, are you okay?
I'm Miles.
I'm Gwanda.
Wait, your name is Gwanda?
Yes, it's African. I'm South African. No accent, though, because I was raised here.
Immediately is stricken with her, but by then he starts to have the spider abilities, and there's a scene where his uncle had taught him this whole idea that he's gonna grab her by the shoulder and just go, hey, you know, in a cool swab. And it's a great scene where he's trying to work it through, and he's like, hey, and it's like, no, dude, it's not working. And he does it, and he gets his hand stuck in her hair. And they end up having to shave the side of her head in order to get his hand off.
But let's talk about the first encounter between them when she calls herself Gwanda because she's trying to hide her identity as well.
And then you realize that she's
from another dimension. But this is funny to me because she just arrives in this dimension and she's masquerading as a student at this elite school.
Yeah, it's weird.
That was weird.
I was here a week. I got thrown into like a week prior. So what am I going to do? But to join school. Yeah. It's.
Is she on the roster at the beginning of every class, or
no. That's like how Marty McFly can go to school and not even be a part of it, you know.
Well, my favorite scene was the reveal of Dr. Octopus. When you think this is some kindly lab assistant, but she's not, then she's telling Peter Parker, this is going to be the most painful thing you've ever experienced, and I, for one, can't wait to see it. And
then the arms come out. Yeah, it was a great reveal because I did not see that coming. And we can talk a little bit more about the Kingpin because I thought he was such a, that's Liev Schreiber.
Liev Schreiber.
Yeah, yes. I thought he did a fantastic job. Not just scenery chewing bad guy. Like he really had. Had it in for Peter Parker.
And I think Liev Schreiber's head in reality is bigger than the Kingpin.
But he was well done. So he was super shocked when all of a sudden there's two Spider-Men running around in his facility. And he's like, I thought you killed this guy. Why are there two of them?
Yeah, and the Kingpin obviously had no idea what he was trying to bring into this dimension, because if he did bring Vanessa back, she would die. Just like
that's the one thing, right? So we didn't talk about that, which is all these characters that have now crossed into this universe are glitching. They're slowly going to disintegrate
unless they get back. Yeah,
right.
Because they can't exist in this reality.
Right. So you mentioned Spider-Man Noir. I don't know where he came from, but he's a pretty cool character.
Yes, he was.
Nicolas Cage was very he wasn't your regular, hey, Nicolas Cage. He was slightly underacting, I guess, maybe. I don't know. Truly acting. But he was a fun character. And he's all black and white. So he was like fascinated. There's a running joke with him in the Rubik's Cube. He's like, is this green? No.
Is this purple? Yeah.
Is this yellow? No. So at the end, he goes, I'm taking this thing back with me. He takes it back to his universe. And like you said, Peter Porker, I think, was slightly underdeveloped as a character. Yeah. He was fun. Most of his funny lines you see in the trailer.
I did like the bit where he gives Miles the hammer and says, hey, it'll fit in your pocket.
It'll fit in your pocket, right. Yeah, and they're comparing super abilities because no one else can turn invisible or have shocks like Miles does. And he goes, yeah, but can you float on air when you smell something yummy? Because he's drawn in a completely different animated style than the rest of them, which is brilliant. And then you bring in Penny Parker, which is this anime version, and she's got a pet spider that lives in this robot. Like, I didn't really quite understand that aspect of it, but she's completely straight up anime.
Yeah, so I would think that the robot would pose more of a challenge to anybody, but the robot really...
he was like Baylor or whatever.
Baymax?
Baymax. Yeah, he was very kind of passive-aggressive.
And I was convinced that Peter Porker was voiced by Nathan Lane. But no, it was John Mulaney at the end.
And I don't know who that is.
He was a writer on SNL, and he had his own short-lived NBC sitcom, and he's got a comedy special right now on Netflix. So he's a stand-up comic, pretty much.
Okay, but he's never really done any
voice work like this, no.
Well, now he's our new Josh Gad, I guess. Everybody will know who he is.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that? It was a call out to Steve Ditko. He was in, and I forget who actually had the phone. He had the phone, and in the contacts list was Steve Ditko.
Yes, I saw Ditko. There's a John Romita signage in the background of one scene. So the guys who wrote and directed this are the same guys who created the Lego movie, right? Phil Lord and...
Really? I did not realize that.
I believe that they are the guys.
And Lego movie is great in itself.
I know. And we saw the trailer for the second one, and I don't think it can live up to the first one just blew me away because that's a movie you walk into and you're like,
with no expectations whatsoever.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it was so cleverly done.
Yeah.
So.
And also there was an Easter egg that I read about that I did not see in the movie itself. When Miles visits his uncle, apparently in the background, it's either a photo or lurking in the background is an image of Donald Glover. So which is a shout out to the fact that he plays the Prowler in Spider-Man Homecoming.
So you said that they've greenlit a sequel.
Yeah.
Mike? So are we going to see other versions of Spider-Man? I mean,
you know what? The most interesting character to me, or the one that maybe has the most possibility, was Spider-Gwen.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if they're going to go down that route.
That would make sense to bring in the female audience.
We haven't seen Spider-Woman yet. And so what? Maybe will we get a Nicholas Hammond cameo? That would be great.
It would be. I think that they should do that.
You've had so much fun. I mean, and so go to the end credit where you get a Spidey 2099, which is such an obscure Spider-Man, but
it is. And then the fact that he goes back to the 67 and that hilarious exchange. Yeah.
So he goes all the way back to the original 1967 cartoon. And they make fun of the animation, which my son said that that's a meme. There's a meme that's out there with that exact animation.
Because apparently that is a Spider-Man episode from the 67 show where there's an imposter Spider-Man. So in the actual show, it's two of the same Spider-Man, and that's the meme. Yeah, that's the meme. Joke. But they just inserted the new Spider-Man.
Yeah, and that it is so worth the wait because you do have to sit through the entire credits to get to that scene. But it is. And you think it's this build-up, it's going to be like this, we're going to see other Spider-Men. And then they cut to that 67.
But I do have to say that the Teen Titans got there first. On an episode of their show, they did an entire Teen Titans episode.
Where they went back.
Drawn in the style of the old Justice League show. So.
Wow. If I'm going to say it right now. If this movie does not win Best Animated Feature, if it loses to Wreck-It Ralph, the Academy has lost all credibility because a couple years ago, Kubo and the Two Strings lost to Zootopia, and I wanted to just go through my television.
Because it's all these Academy members that don't see all the movies. They go for, it's the Disney one. I'm going to vote for that one.
Yeah, well, this is a game changer. This truly is phenomenal. And there was even a joke where Peter Porker, when they were fighting toward the end, and someone makes like a derogatory comment, goes, "You got a problem with cartoons?" And that speaks directly to this movie because I actually had a discussion. It was more than a discussion, but one of my coworkers, my friends, laughed at me when I told him I was going to see this and how excited I was to actually see it. And he goes, "How good could it be? It's a cartoon." And I'm like, that's how you're going to be? You've never seen The Incredibles? You've never seen, and I'm just going down the list, Toy Story? And he goes, "Well, yeah, no, I've seen them, but I wouldn't go to the theater to go see it. I'll wait till it comes." And I'm just like, all right, dude, I can't, I don't even know why we're friends anymore.
Jeff's ex-friend.
Mike and Jeff, when you first heard that this was in the works, your first thought, like mine, was it overkill? Was it Spider-Man overkill?
I don't know if it was overkill, but it was unnecessary. It doesn't really seem to, especially because we've now reestablished Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So why go down this road?
Yeah, I think it would be diluting the brand almost.
Right. And in fact, it's reinvigorated.
Yeah,
exactly. Dilute away. Yeah.
So Sony has redeemed themselves from the Emoji Movie. I'll tell you that.
So I think this can only heighten anticipation for Spider-Man Far From Home at this point.
Oh, imagine that. They pop in a little background.
Yeah.
He's walking around and all of a sudden you just see Spider-Ham just kind of poke his head in somewhere.
But what do you think about this? Because, I mean, now you've introduced Miles Morales, which is like a completely different Spider-Man, kind of more with, what's happening today versus kind of Peter Parker that's been around forever. I mean, you're almost like, I'd like to see a little bit more about Miles instead of about Peter.
I agree. And we'll get into that with the confessional because that's a solid argument for, Peter Parker had a nice run, but.
And it's possible because Sony, if you think about it, Sony only has Spider-Man in their Marvel canon. So they could really open this up into a whole universe like Marvel is. If they do a series of Miles Morales live action.
It could be straight up. Yeah.
It's a separate, it's a separate reality. So they could have each could have its own series and be, be independent.
But we know that bridge exists between these realities.
Yeah, so we could have a Peter Parker series. We could have a Miles Morales series. We could have a Spider-Ham series. Yeah.
Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man.
Get on that, Sony.
There you go. I did have one issue, and I guess it's a comic book related thing, which was, so Miles' last name is Morales, but his dad's badge said Davis. And I was really kind of like, wait a minute, what is that all about? So I looked it up, and I guess Miles has his mom's last name. That's all there is to it.
And all of our female listeners just gave a silent nod just then. That's right.
That's right. It was a long time coming.
So, there you go. It is a sight to behold.
So how many buckets? I think this is going to be high. This is going to be high.
This movie just blew me away. I'm going 5. I'm going to go all
5.
I am all the way.
You're going the ultimate amount of buckets. This is like on par for you.
If I could go 5.5, I probably.
This is like the Citizen Kane of animated films for you.
Yeah. It really is. It is truly a game changer in every aspect.
This is so well done. I mean, the mashup between the animation and the hand-drawn and just, the visual stimulation, it's a great story. And I'm with Jeff all the way. This is a 5.
No, I can't go as high as you guys did, so. But I will go 4. I'll give it 4. It was just a little bit lacking in the story for me, but I loved looking at this, and
I think the presentation elevates it.
Yeah, and when you're in a movie and you don't want it to be over, that's the hallmark of a really good movie.
Yeah.
So
and it's a 2-hour movie. Most animated movies, you're like, all right, I'm in for 90 minutes, $1.50. And it was a solid 2-hour movie. I think it's 156. You are completely invested. It's a great story, and it's
genius.
We need more Miles Morales. Absolutely. Go see this, please. Twice.
All right. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, let's go to the concession stand before we start to speak of our second feature, which is the 1977 version of Spider-Man.
Do we have to?
We do. We've committed. We watched. We might as well.
This is Web Spinning Spider Man with flyaway action pack. Assembly required. Load the web spinning fluid and squeeze.
Web spinning Spider Man. Small webs, big webs. Spider Man webs are catching webs. Webs around fingers, webs around legs. Webs, webs, web spinning Spider Man.
Web Spinning Spider Man with flyaway action pack and web spinning fluid by Mego.
Okay, so we're back. So what this is a CBS TV production of Spider-Man. Stan Lee sold the rights in the mid-'70s to the character to CBS, who I guess they took it and they did what they could with it, the best that they could at the time. And they made a pilot movie, which we watched and which we're going to discuss today. Yes. But they turned it into a series, which comprised of 13 episodes over 2 years. So apparently the pilot episode, which was 2 hours, without commercials, an hour and a half, it seemed like 2 hours. Apparently it was a ratings bonanza, but CBS was reluctant to give it more than sporadic airings, the episodes that they produced after the pilot, because it wasn't a big hit with the older demographic. It was only a big hit with the younger demographic. So they were reluctant.
Which is so short-sighted.
Yeah.
Looking back. So Wonder Woman and Incredible Hulk were both on the air at around that same time?
Yes. I think Spider-Man premiered after Wonder Woman, but before the Incredible Hulk had taken
over. Okay. Because I did read that they canceled this show specifically. They canceled it around the same time they canceled Wonder Woman. And they kept the Hulk on for another couple of years till like 82 or whatever. And they finished those off with a bunch of movies. Specifically because they didn't want to be known as the superhero network. Which the CW is now laughing at them going, dude, man, we're making tons of money doing this.
And the movie that we just watched, the pilot episode, was the highest rated CBS program of 1977.
But CBS was like your grandparents' channel.
It was. Even then it was.
Right.
I think they had just, premiered The Dukes of Hazzard that year. So they were trying to maybe get a little bit younger audience with that. But you had things like Knots Landing, Dallas, all these boring shows. 60 Minutes. Yeah, stuff that no kid wanted to watch.
No. So short-sightedness on their part, and I'm sure that somewhere along the line. Well, but it is what it is. It's not. I mean, I guess as a 7-year-old, you're probably enthralled with this.
Yeah, because as a kid, this was a big deal.
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Really
the only Spider-Man we had up until that point were the 67 cartoons. And then you had live action Spider-Man on Electric Company.
Oh, that's right.
Episodes. Yeah. Those little episodes, which I didn't really care for the Electric Company as a whole.
That's the only reason I watched that show.
Spider-Man. Yeah. And at least he was fighting villains. In this, he's fighting drug lords and crazy cults, which is not kid-friendly in any way.
No, it's not. And that was another aspect of the show that CBS was shying away from. They did not want to use supervillains because they wanted to speak to that older demographic.
Yeah.
So they were trying to put Spider-Man in real-life situations.
Which, it's creepy. So this is the origin story. Again, we go back and we find out how Peter Parker gets his powers, creates his suit in like a day, which is amazing. At least in the original Tobey Maguire, he sews it in. He has a makeshift suit first.
But was there an Uncle Ben reference? I didn't catch it.
No. As a matter of fact, you only see Aunt May once, and then she's only seen in one other episode and is played by a different lady. And he lives like in a Victoria. So this takes place in New York, and every building he climbs is an LA structure.
Yeah. And the Aunt May's home looks like a funeral home. Like they borrowed a funeral home. And she looks like a refugee from the Love Boat herself.
She probably came right off that episode.
Yeah, she probably did.
Fantasy Island. She was at Fantasy Island.
So as Jeff said, we get Peter Parker's origin story here. So he's a college kid. He's actually, you see him in one scene and during the famous, infamous spider bite scene. He's working with radioactive materials with some other kid, and they're not supervised.
No, not only that, they have no protection whatsoever.
You forgot to put your film badge on. Oh. Of course, if you want to live dangerously, that's your business, but I figure if any radiation gets loose in here, we ought to know about it. I mean, I am a growing boy.
And there's a joke, there's a delivery man that comes in, he's like, hey, at least my dentist gives me a lead apron. What do you let me walk around here for?
Yeah, whatever happened to that COD package? He never goes back to get
I know. He
never money to. We don't even know what that was.
That was a deleted scene, I think, when he finally gets that.
The special edition.
So the big scenes in here, the money shots, if you will, are Peter / Spider-Man crawling up the face of these buildings that Jeff had just mentioned. Maybe at the most 4 stories, 5 stories tall.
Right.
And
there's some creative camera angles.
There are, but you cannot hide the fact that, and I couldn't really see the wire. To their credit, you can't really see it, but he's not even touching the wall.
It looks like he's climbing up a wall covered in bacon grease.
Yeah, it's like
he's just slipping and sliding as he's going.
It's like Mummenschanz climbing up a wall.
Deep on that one. I used to love those commercials.
Mummenschanz, marvelously magical, says the Associated Press. An original adventure in theater and dance. Mummenschanz. The effect is illuminating.
Does anybody in our listening audience know what Mummenschanz is?
Someone bring that to Broadway. But yeah, there was some wire work, and then there was some rear projection work, which is actually pretty impressive, I guess, for the day. The scene where he's climbing around outside Aunt May's house, he's not climbing. It's like a rear projection, and he's just climbing around it.
He's climbing on a blue screen, and then they put him over
but it was pretty impressive for the day.
Yeah, some of those shots actually looked like it was fairly well done.
And they had some nice first-person shots of him looking around the building. I thought it was funny as he was pretty awkward, but the minute he got in the costume, he became very bug-like with his movement.
Yeah, like he's always like crouching down and looking around with his arms out.
Yeah, he was probably just happy to be out of those bell-bottom pants.
Which was exactly the way that the Electric Company Spider-Man used to be. So I think he took some of his cues.
Probably. Well, that's the only reference point he had. Yeah, just looking at those skin-tight bell-bottoms just chafed my thigh just thinking about it.
But let's talk about Nicholas Hammond himself playing Peter Parker. I think physically, they did a pretty good job at nailing the Peter Parker look from the 70s comics with this guy.
Oh, I was totally, I could not disagree more. Really? I was just like, this guy is nothing like Peter Parker.
Yeah, it's kind of like...
I think the grown Peter Parker who used to have the curly bangs with his camera around his neck, I thought they did a pretty good job with this guy. But listen... This Nicholas Hammond, his claim to fame before this Spider-Man, he was one of the Von Trapp kids from Sound of Music.
Yes. Really?
Was he?
Which one was he?
He was Friedrich Von Trapp.
That's...
it's interesting you mentioned this, Jim, because as I was watching this, I'm trying to think of where have I seen this girl before, and I've forgotten her name already because I'm trying to put this thing out of my mind. I'm like, who is this? I'm like, I'm going to go look it up, and I literally spent about half the movie trying to figure out. So she was on An Officer and a Gentleman, and she played the role of Seeger.
Officer and a Gentleman.
And she was also in Beverly Hills Cop.
We don't get Mary Jane in this whatsoever. She's not, because of some other character. Right, so he gets his powers, and then he has to fight. There's a weird cop that's chasing him around.
Yeah, a cigar chomping.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a cross between the J. Jonah Jameson and Dum Dum Dugan character.
Where's the money, Monahan? Where's the 5,000 big ones?
There must have been somebody else in the car.
Wrong, Monahan, wrong. It was a lone wolf, but a crazy lone wolf.
Yeah. Do you know that was Larry Tate who played Jonah Jameson for one episode? That was Larry Tate from Bewitched. That was Darren's boss. That was Darren's boss. David White was his name. He only played him for one episode.
Yeah.
And one of the bad guys, one of the henchmen, did you recognize him? I had to look him up because I don't know his name. His name is Len Lesser, but you may know him as Jerry Seinfeld's Uncle Leo.
Yes, it was.
Uncle Leo! Hello!
I like the fact that after he got bit by the spider, and then he's outside, and so the bad guy, Byron, who's like the worst televangelist mind control guy, like they're threatening to kill 10 people. Like this is the whole thrust of the episode, is that he's threatening to kill 10 random people, force them to kill themselves. And this guy just starts driving, chasing after Peter, and he starts climbing up the wall. And then you immediately have to have a 2-minute flashback of what just happened 5 minutes before to remind you that he got bit by a spider, and that's why he's climbing up the wall. I'm like, I'm not that dumb.
Well, they had to fill up 2 hours.
Well, I guess so. And then he saved that girl's uncle, grandfather, dad, whoever. He's like in the hospital, and he climbs out the window, and Spider-Man disappears, climbs down the wall, grabs the guy out of the window,
and puts him on the roof.
Just push him in the window.
Yeah, I know.
Climb up the side of the building with this old man.
So now he can jump from a larger height to kill himself.
Right, exactly. And I also like you're talking about the fact that they're working in the lab with no supervision or any kind of protection. There's a scene where Peter walks into the newspaper and he sneezes in his hand and then immediately shakes the girl's hand. Dude, come on.
What's the bad guy's name again?
Byron.
Byron. Okay. So this is the closest to a supervillain that this show gets, right? So some guy who's got mind control.
If you wanted to compare him to a supervillain, he'd be Mesmero.
So as Jeff said before, he can get people to do what he wants. So he's threatened to have 10 random people kill themselves unless he gets $50 million or whatever it was. And there's a scene,
$1 million.
I think he kind of sells himself as a self-help guru or something, and that's how these people come to see him.
You deserve to be the miserable fools you are because you'll never be happy.
Well, I know what would make me happy. A house in the country for my children.
That's another one of those stupid dreams.
Yep.
And there's this one woman who he asks her what she wants, and she says, I'd like a house in the country, and he tells her to shut up, basically.
Do you think that's going to make you happy?
It was bothering me, like, where I knew this guy from. And it finally dawned on me that I have an album from 1972 called a Spider-Man album called From Beyond the Grave, and it's one of these book and records that you open up, and it's got a gatefold cover, and you read along with the panels as the record's going, and it's a story about the Kingpin kidnapping Aunt May and holding her for ransom because he wants Peter Parker to take a picture of Spider-Man with like a gun type camera. And this is a rock comic, so there's rock songs in between the little vignettes of story. And this guy who did Byron is the same voice as the Kingpin on that record.
Oh, wow.
Petey, is that you, Petey?
Aunt May, where are you? Are you all right?
Petey, what's happening? Oh my.
Don't worry, kid. She's just fine. The Kingpin wouldn't hurt an old lady. Not unless he had to. Now listen, and listen good. I would appreciate a small favor.
What do you want me to do?
You're the kid that takes all those pictures of Spider-Man for the Daily Bugle. I simply want you to take a picture of Spider-Man for me. We even fixed up a special camera for the job. The thing is that this picture will be Spider-Man's last.
You want me to murder Spider-Man?
Now listen, punk. You want to see the old lady alive, you'll do exactly as I tell you. You've got 24 hours to get the job done. And remember, no tricks. If you want to see your Auntie May alive, Spider-Man must die.
Like a spider, love like a man. Everybody's talking about that Marvel Spider-Man. Amazing, amazing. How does he ever win?
So
they reused him, huh?
Yeah, the music is building behind him until it just like breaks into this rock song about Spider-Man.
Which they used in Spider-Man Into the Dark or Into the Dark?
They did not, unfortunately.
That would have been genius.
Not, yes.
So that's the one thing we forgot to talk about. In Into the Spider-Verse, there's a running joke where Peter Parker actually cuts a Christmas album, and then in the end credits, you get the song, and it's just... It's genius because he just realizes that, why did I write this song? Why did I agree to do
Now,
this?
was that a real thing, that Christmas album?
I don't know. I would assume that if anybody owned it, you would. So
yeah, I don't have that.
It is now, probably.
Yeah, it probably is now. Yeah, exactly. So go to the newer Marvel Netflix with the running Daredevil hallway fight, and every season it gets more epic.
Yeah.
This show started the original hallway fight with the three samurai.
Spider-Man is afraid of these three samurai guys. They're chasing him throughout the thing.
But the minute they're no longer under mind control, he takes pictures with them. Don't you think that they would rat him out? Because it's not Peter Parker taking that picture. It's Spider-Man propping the camera up and then getting behind and going, all right, guys, let's take a picture. Like, wait, where's the guy who's getting credit for this stuff?
And there's like maybe 2 or 3 different fight scenes between Spider-Man and these 3 guys, which are just pathetic fight scenes.
Oh, yeah, they are, yeah.
Yeah, and
well, Stan Lee called this juvenile. He actually referred to this show as juvenile. He was not happy with it.
But again, a runaway hit for CBS. So in their infinite wisdom, they took it off the air.
Yeah. Their whole budget was spent on sending him to the Empire State Building for one scene.
They had to nail Angela Lansbury for Murder, She Wrote. So all the money went over there.
There you go. So I looked it up. Ted Danson was in 2 episodes. Madeline Stowe was in an episode, and Morgan Fairchild were all in Spider-Man episodes.
Why weren't they in this episode?
they were too smart. I don't know.
Did you read the thing about how they wanted to do a crossover TV movie with Spider-Man and the Hulk? Yeah.
And then it was canceled.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess Bill Bixby was all in. So
yeah, he was set to direct it, Bill Bixby.
Oh yeah, okay.
But the reason that they didn't, the reason given was that Lou Ferrigno was not available. He was off filming a Hercules movie.
And yeah, he's on the Hercules movie. And yet he's at every comic convention I've ever been to in the last 30 years, and his line is around the corner. The man cornered the market on Polaroid years ago. He used to charge you $30 to take a Polaroid picture with him. And people still line up to see this man. So why Nicholas Hammond is not milking it? It is such a product of its time.
So did we watch this as kids? I remember
No, I
this.
never did.
I remember this episode, specifically the part where he's swinging on the tree with doing the webs, and that's another thing.
Oh yeah, that was
The webbing is totally like a reverse film of the webbing going back into his hand.
Oh yes, right.
All he's doing is like just like like the electric company Spider-Man, throwing a net out is basically what it was.
There you go. Yeah. No, I never got into this. And part of the reason is there was a point in my life where we only had 2 channels and CBS was not one of them. I was never really privy. It was probably past my bedtime.
Yeah. Like I said, I have only ever seen this pilot, the one that we watched for today's episode.
And that may be the last.
I don't remember any of the other subsequent episodes.
Yeah. I'd like to find the episode with Ted Danson in it though.
I was sort of like comparing this in my mind to like shows that I like really enjoyed, which was like Wonder Woman and Bionic Man and stuff. And I was like, those were so much better than this.
Yeah, Wonder Woman was, even then I didn't really care for that, but I remember it being a more titillating. She's still a meow.
So what would we?
Do we have to rate this?
I think it's unrated.
It's a curious.
And do you know that they actually released this in theaters in Europe?
Yes. How crazy is that?
As a movie? Imagine how disappointed you would be going to see this in a theater.
There's actually a Japanese version out there. They did their own TV show. And it's just...
Oh, I've seen clips of that.
Bonkers.
We should review that. It's like Spider-Man with a machine gun. It's just...
Yeah, and there's a Superman one as well that they did. It is, yeah. I don't know. I don't even know how to rate this. It was fun to go back and watch it.
It was. I wouldn't give it 0.
No, you can't give it 0 because it was what it was at the time.
Yeah, I would give it 1. I got
to go at least 2.5.
I got to go 2.
Yeah, 2.5 maybe too high.
But it is on YouTube. Anybody that's curious, that's never seen it before, it is on a pretty good.
It's a pretty decent
it is
transfer. Yes, yeah. So I would have loved to have seen Nicholas Hammond cameo in Spiderverse as a real like human actor.
Yeah, I wouldn't have recognized him if I'm sure he's.
Oh no! Now I don't know. You know,
it would be nice if they acknowledged. Yeah, I agree.
That would have been fun.
So this leads us to our confessional this week.
Confessionals.
What is your favorite iteration of Spider-Man? Completely. I'm not just talking movies. I'm talking in any way, shape, or form. Comics, TV, vinyl album, perhaps.
Mego Dow.
It's all right. Who wants to go first with this one?
All right, I'll go first, which is I stuck basically with the movies. I will say, comic book wise, I really liked when they rebooted the universe, the Ultimate Universe, Peter Parker. Because I mean, I read Spider-Man, but I wasn't really completely invested in him. Over the years, you know, when McFarlane wrote him, it was fun, but you were more invested for the artwork. But when Ultimate Spider-Man, again, they took him back to his roots, to a kid. And he did have a friendship with Kitty Pryde from the X-Men. So I always kind of like that. But I got to go with Tom Holland. I really like this new cinematic Tom Holland. I've said it on previous episodes, especially when we talked about Infinity Wars, that he's not only a great Spider-Man, but he's a great Peter Parker. Although Miles Morales is giving him a run for his money right now because I really like this character.
So, Jeff, you and I are absolutely synchronized on this episode because I was like, Tom Holland has totally refreshed this franchise, right? I mean, they really needed to bring in someone that was younger, that had a sort of a more fresh take on it. Yeah, but what I want to see more of is the Miles Morales, and even saying that, what I really want to see more of is Spider-Gwen. You know, I just think that there's so much potential there for like a female sort of Spider-Man woman kind of thing. So
yeah,
I got to go Spider-Gwen, but I'm totally with you.
And she's phenomenal to look at. Her design, the character design, and even her personality, I thought, was vastly different than anything we've seen so far in the Spider. Because Mary Jane has always kind of taken. I mean, she's a very strong character, but she's always kind of taken a back seat to Spider-Man. So now that you have a female Spider-Man out there, Spider-Gwen, and again, she came along after I stopped reading comics, so I'm not really all that familiar with her. But she's a fascinating character to look at, and I agree. I think she's definitely warrants getting her own movie.
Well, if Captain Marvel does gangbusters, you know what studios do? They always say, well, let's put more women in these comic book movies. So
it only took them, 10 years?
We might see a Spider-Gwen. They might greenlight that.
Maybe. I'm still waiting for the She-Hulk.
Oh, I love She-Hulk. She-Hulk is always one of my favorites.
But it's gotta be that John Byrne kind of.
Yeah, you got to bring him on as a consultant at least, because if it was
what he did with that comic is just, she broke the fourth wall long before Deadpool ever did.
But even before that, when she was a member of the Fantastic
Four,
that was the reason, that I stuck in with that title.
I agree.
Her and John Byrne. So with my Spider-Man, I went animated. So I don't know if you guys ever saw this version of it, but 2009's Spectacular Spider-Man animated series. And this lasted 2 seasons. It was going to go for a third. I think the ratings were good, but they canceled it, I think, because it was detracting from the Andrew Garfield movies that were about to be rebooted. But what they did was they went back to the teenage Spider-Man, before the Andrew Garfield, before the Tom Holland. So they set him in high school again. And for these 2 seasons, they really tried to introduce all the characters that you were accustomed to, be it the Lizard with Dr. Connors, Venom they tried to get in there, the Sinister Six. So they really, really packed this little show in with all the supervillains they could. I think there was a sense of maybe they weren't going to be on that long, and they had to get in everything that they could. And the animation is great. The voice actors are great. So anybody that's never seen the Spectacular Spider-Man animated show, I heartily recommend it.
You said 2009? So was this on Nickelodeon? Was this on Cartoon?
I think it was on Disney XD, if that existed then. It was either on Disney or Disney XD. And it was the show before Ultimate Spider-Man. When they canceled this a couple of years, there wasn't an animated Spider-Man, and then Ultimate Spider-Man came out.
Okay.
Which I was very disappointed with, but that's another story. But yeah, Spectacular Spider-Man is tops in my book.
I might have to check it out.
Yeah, check it out. It's all on DVD.
Cool.
And special mention, we've mentioned it before on this episode, but the Electra Company Spider-Man as well.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay, true believers, here he is, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
But that was the first live-action Spider-Man that we ever got as kids. Anywhere, I think. So shout out to the Electra Company and to Spidey Super Stories, I think.
Spidey.
So here we are. So next week, we are going to go into the ocean depths and give our verdict on Aquaman. Jeff's already seen it, actually, as of this recording.
Last night.
He's special.
I feel so special.
With Aquaman, we're going to go back and revisit the 1954 Disney classic, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So anybody that watches along with us, reserve that at your local library. So there you go.
I'm actually excited. This was, when you every Sunday when you watch The Wonderful World of Disney, that iconic squid attack scene is front and center in the opening credits.
And just the design of the Nautilus itself is amazing.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, still imitated today. Nautilus, as a matter of fact, that was the first atomic submarine. They named it the Nautilus after that ship.
Yeah.
See, look at my history coming back in.
We can discuss this next week, but did Jules Verne envision the first atomic-powered submarine?
Jules Verne was revolutionary, as Doc Brown will tell you. He set many things in motion.
So that's next week, where I'm looking forward to that one.
Our confessional right there. Yep. Jules Verne.
Whale of a tale or two.
My spider senses are tingling. Jim's starting to sing.
All right, so we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening, as always.
Yes, thank you very much. It was a great.
Go to our Facebook page, email us, tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
Spider-Man. I even got my own theme song. There you go. Ciao.
We'll see you next week.
I'm not taking no Spider-Man to that part of town.